In this video of 2 Meter Sessions Friends Around the World, I talk with James Dean Bradfield, singer of British acclaimed rock band Manic Street Preachers. We talk about his upcoming solo album, Even In Exile, an album that has been inspired by the work of Chilean theater director, poet, singer-songwriter and political activist Victor Jara.
He seemed to be very different to other what you would call protest singers. He's not saying, fuck you, stay there, I don't want anything to do with you. He's saying, please, can we talk? Can we be together instead?
And we also talk a bit about the Manic Street Preachers.
We've started doing demos, we've started writing songs, but we haven't played any of those songs together yet. That's a wall of CDs. Fucking hell. Is that alphabeticized and genre-sized?
Yes, it's alphabetical.
Oh my God.
And
my God.
I took out your band CDs.
Oh, you haven't got them all, man. Oh, you should, shame upon you.
I haven't got them all, sorry.
I'm joking.
But I do have a lot.
If you've got one, I'm impressed. That's amazing. That must be a life's work, all that there.
Yeah, well, it is actually. I've been making radio and television ever since 30 years.
It's a kind of CD for me, is a very underrated format. I think it was a great format, I think.
Are you in the studio now or are you at home?
Yes, I'm in the studio. I'm in the studio in Cullion in Wales. Okay. And yeah, this is where we do our work and stuff. Yeah.
I was preparing the interview and I thought, oh, you're very stuck to Wales. You love to live in Wales.
Yes, I've had my fair amount of living outside of Wales. I lived in London for quite a while. I lived there for about 10 years. And I realized I was moving within London and I was getting closer and closer to the M4. And the M4 is the main road back to Wales. And once I realized that I'd moved as close as I could to the M4, I realized I was subconsciously moving back to Wales. So I decided to move back. And it's just that thing, you know, I'm sure that you have the same thing in Holland. Some people are probably born in the provinces and they gravitate towards Amsterdam or, you know, or they kind of like gravitate towards The Hague or Eindhoven or wherever. Some people leave behind where they grew up, but none of us ever really left it behind. We've always gravitated back to Wales, especially Nick. Nick in the Manics has always lived close to where he was born. And I never became a Londoner, which is not a big deal, but I always felt like I was a Welshman in London, kind of thing. Yeah. I've got some kind of subconscious gratitude towards Wales. Yeah. I feel as if it's the place that taught me lots, and I feel like I owe it more than it owes me. So, and I feel as if I understand the place and it understands me. I don't even know what any of that means, but that's the way I feel, you know.
I knew when I cradled you that you were gonna shine. As your hand held so tightly, forever I thrown onto mine.
It's very interesting to see how you treated a topic like the death of Victor Jara on your new album. Even in Exile is the title of the album. You pinpointed some elements out of the life of Victor Jara.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, it's not all about his death. Most of the album is about his life, really. Yeah. Victor Jara was always somebody that I was aware of from the mid-'80s or so, because you had people like U2 writing songs about him or referencing him. People like Simple Minds were dedicating whole albums to him. And then I remember there was a ballet in the 80s called Ghost Dances, which referenced Victor Jara as well. So by the time I was near 50 years old, I knew the Victor Jara story very well, but I didn't know so much about his music. So it took somebody else to actually be writing about Victor. And I hitched my way onto that project. The person that was writing these lyrics was Patrick Jones, who was Nicky Wire's brother. And he had no intention of writing publishing any of this stuff. But I said to him, "Oh, can I please use this stuff? Because I know lots about Victor, and I love that I've got space and time to do something. And this seems like fate. You know, I want to try and write music to all these words."
They could not regress.
I was always aware of him as a story, almost as a legend, really. I understood his start, his middle, and his end. Of course, the tragic end. I understood all that because I'd read so much about it. I understood as much as I could understand by reading about it, not being in Chile. Strangely, I didn't know much about his music until I started writing this. I knew one of his songs, Manifesto, and I knew Bruce Springsteen's version of that because Bruce Springsteen covered it in Santiago. But I knew the original version. But I had never really delved into Victor Jara and listened to his back catalogue. I didn't own any Victor Jara records. And I started buying a lot of the records that I could find on vinyl around about 2.5 years ago. And that's where the shock set in for me.
Aquí se encajó mi canto, como dijera Violeta.
He seemed to be very different to other, what you would call protest singers. His voice is almost quite feminine for me. Other protest singers, of course, will be a bit more confrontational. You'll have that sense of injustice in the chords they use, in the voice they use, in the velocity of what they sing. But a lot of the songs that Victor Jara sings seem to be quite feminine, and they're always innately beautiful. And some of the songs he writes, a song like Manifesto, which I always knew, but I never realized. It's called Manifesto. We all know what the word manifesto means. But the song seems like a prayer to peace, or it seems like a prayer for the ambitions of Chile. It's almost like an incantation of the spirit of the Chile that he sees in his heart and his head. It's not a protest song, really, I don't think. His voice is something which is much more conciliatory and much more inclusive than other protest singers. Yeah. He's not saying, fuck you, stay there, I don't want anything to do with you. He's saying, please, can we talk? Can we be together instead? Which I thought, I was quite shocked by, really.
How does it work with you when you're intrigued by someone's work like Victor Jara? You call the word shock, that you're shocked. But what does it do with you as a writer?
I think you stand in awe of it. Once you discover something that you love, whether it be something I loved when I was young, the things you discover when you're older are a bit more nuanced, aren't they? It's not about that rush of blood to the head. You know, the things that you discover and that shock you are always a bit more nuanced when you're older. That's just the way it is. I'm 51. I can't pretend I'm a young man anymore. But when you discover something like this and you're surprised by it, you stand in awe of it. And then you get intimidated by it. And then that old instinct of rising to the challenge kicks in. You start thinking, right, wow, I don't want to fuck this up. And I think, I don't know, I'm no analyst, and I don't really believe in self-analysis that much, because for me, you know, it always leads to paralysis through analysis kind of thing. But I think the one thing that's always driven me as a musician is fear of failure. I'm much more scared of failing than I am of not succeeding kind of thing. Whenever Nick or Richie in the past have given me a lyric and I realize it's a brilliant lyric, I'm always scared of failing them kind of thing. So it was the same with this. I had these words from Patrick Jones and I didn't want to fail him. And I didn't want to fail the aesthetic of Victor Jara. There is an aesthetic there that you don't want to fail. That he had tenderness, he had empathy for people that didn't agree with him, and he didn't agree with them. But he managed to achieve some kind of magnanimity, some kind of magnanimous empathy. So I didn't want to be too confrontational, really, because that's not the way he worked.
I descended into hell when I lost your smile, but I was always there, even in exile. In the cadence of the wind, it's thrown in your strings. It slungs upon your tongue, rivers of us join and run. They join and run.
My question for the year 2020 is, if you consider your story with Victor Jara in combination with all the things that are happening at the moment, whether it's Corona, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's Brexit, whether it's Donald Trump, what a shocking year it is, isn't it?
It's the worst news cycle I've ever known. The news cycle that we are trapped in is, it actually makes you think that you're stuck in some kind of Matrix-esque narrative. You know, I start thinking, nah, this isn't real. You know, this is actually just a little cinema role played whilst I'm trapped in the Matrix pod kind of thing, you know. You start questioning whether it's real. Politically, I think, you know, the biggest thing that shocks me is that when I'm in the 80s, I thought left and right was so diametrically opposed. Yeah. I didn't think it could get any worse. And that's when I was a teenager, when I started really getting into politics. Fuck me, it's worse than it was in the 80s. It's much worse.
It's incomparable to the year that The Clash got so successful with London Calling.
Yeah. It's incomparable. I think it's much. I've got to give young people credit here. If somebody ever says, why don't young people write more political songs? I would say to those people, it's because it's much harder to write those songs now. It's much harder to write a song from a leftist point of view, because there's no one church of the left. Yeah. The left is many different churches, and everybody in the church of the left is attacking each other rather than attacking people on the right. And the people on the right are saying, you guys keep fighting amongst each other and we'll occupy the center ground. And that's what's happening. You know, the right, they put their tanks on the center ground, and then the people in the left just fight each other. And the Tories in Britain and the Conservative Party in Britain must sometimes laugh, because they wake up every morning and they find people on the so-called left, or what you would call broadly socialist Labour supporters. They're just attacking each other all the time.
Yeah.
Which I find impossibly frustrating. You know, because if we're history, I think me and you are going to be very aware that if the centre ground in politics is left unoccupied, some bastard always comes and occupies it and runs away with the power, doesn't he? Kind of thing. Yeah. That's what's happening. It happened in America and it happened in Britain, you know.
It took you some 14 years to come up with a second solo album.
Yeah.
It must have something to do with the simple fact that you're also quite a prominent member of Manic Street Preachers.
The bare truth is that if the Manics said they wanted to put out a record every year, I'd be very happy with that. I'd be very happy just doing my main job, which is being in Manic Street Preachers, because that's where I'm happiest. The chemistry I have with Nick and Sean is irreplaceable. And it's something that I'm very lucky to have, because I grew up with them. Sean is virtually my brother, and Nick has been my best friend for a long time. Yeah. So to actually have those relationships still at the age of 51 is quite strange. But to actually be in a band with them is even stranger. But around about 3 years ago, we made the decision to take a break, just so we could refocus, and also because our next album will be our 14th album. And it gets harder to try and do something which you haven't done before, if you've done that much. You know, most bands that have had a record contract, their average lifespan is 1 to 2 albums. Well, we'll be on our 14th, you know? Yeah. So we decided we needed to take a small break to refocus and find something new to do. But once we had taken that decision, I panicked because I like having something to do. I like having a focus, and I like having a record to complete. And I like the pressure of having to write music and perform music to other people's words. I'm an institutionalized musician. You know, I need something to do.
When you started off as a young musician, did you ever expect to become a full live musician as you've done?
I wanted to be. I think there was a schism in the band. Myself and Sean wanted a career. We wanted a big back catalogue of work to look back on in the near distant future. You know, we wanted to be in a band forever, and Nick and Richie wanted to be a shooting star like the Sex Pistols. They wanted to do one album in a blaze of glory and be legends, kind of thing. And it became pretty obvious quite quickly that we weren't the Sex Pistols, kind of thing. We weren't as legendary as the Sex Pistols ever were. So it was going to have to be more than one album. And I was very happy with that, to be honest. I think that's a dynamic that's always worked. We understood that we were slightly different people in the band, but it didn't mean that we weren't connected to each other. We always lived with those differences, and it didn't force us farther apart at all. We always reconciled all those things. So I hoped we would be this. I hoped we would have this career this long, but I certainly didn't know that it would happen.
It's a wonderful career, I would say. Started off somewhere.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So you say interesting, I say wonderful. What is the difference? Well, it's multi-layered. The word interesting is multi-layered.
It's multi-layered, yeah. It's hard to look at your back catalogue and not see the mistakes you've made. As a writer, I'm sure that if you look back on something you wrote 20 years ago, you would go, some of my other writer friends, especially friends that have written books, they look at those books and they go, I would not have done it this way now. Which is always the fascinating thing, isn't it? You know, when people interview us and they ask, have you changed as a person? Our immediate reaction is to say, no, I don't think I've really changed. Essentially, I'm still the same person that I was when I was 20 years old. Of course, that's bollocks. It's not true, is it? Because, you know, the way you would write now is probably different to the way you wrote 30 years ago, I would assume. Yeah. And the way I construct a song now is different to the way I did it 30 years ago too.
We also hear that a new album for Manic Street Preachers was announced to be released in 2021.
Oh, there's no announcement, but we have a hope that we will release something in 21.
Okay.
But there's no announcement as such, because how can you announce anything in a period of complete uncertainty, you know? So we've started doing demos, we've started writing songs, but we haven't played any of those songs together yet. So we still don't know what those songs really represent or feel like yet. And we don't know when we can plan a tour and go and play those songs, you know? Oh. So yeah, we have a hope that we'll get a record out in 2021. Yeah.
Is that the same with the songs of Even in Exile? You can't do them all.
No, I'm never going to go on the road with this. I thought I might do a couple of gigs with this record, but obviously with this year now, it's never going to happen because, I don't think any concerts will happen this year in Britain. If they do, they'll be very specialized and very designed kind of thing. So there's no way I'm going to do any concerts for this year. And that means that if I did any concerts of this record, Even in Exile, it would be next year. And that would get in the way of me starting a new Manic Street Preachers record. So it won't happen now. So, you know, history keeps changing everything that we do. It changes the holidays we go on. It changes the concerts we go and see. I had plans to go and see a couple of concerts, and obviously that's not happening along with everybody else. And also I'm not playing any concerts, and my children are not going to school, and all those things are cancelled, you know, so it's just the way it is.
Thank you very much for sharing your time with me today.
It's a pleasure.
See you soon.
Yes, I hope to see you soon as well, man. Take care, man. Stay safe.
Bye.
Hopefully see you next year, hopefully.
Okay,
Take care. See you, man. Bye-bye.